The trouble began the morning the homeowner found their driveway blocked by the neighbor's aging silver SUV. It wasn't the first time the neighbor had inched too close to the property line, but this time the vehicle was parked fully across the edge of the driveway, angled just enough to make it impossible to exit without driving over the lawn. The homeowner tried to ignore it at first, believing it might be a rare mistake. But as the days went by, the situation quickly proved to be much more intentional than accidental. The neighbor, a middle-aged man known in the community for his habit of taking advantage of any small loophole, had always been territorial. He had a reputation for claiming public spaces as if they belonged exclusively to him. Still, blocking someone's driveway seemed like a new low. When the homeowner confronted him politely, the neighbor brushed it off with a smug explanation about how the street was free for anyone to use. It was clear he didn't care how much inconvenience he caused. His confidence made the homeowner suspect this wasn't just laziness, it was entitlement at its finest. As the week progressed, the blocked driveway became a recurring problem. Each morning, the homeowner found their access obstructed in a slightly different way. Sometimes the SUV would be pulled halfway across the drive. Other times it sat just far enough in front to make reversing dangerous. It soon became evident that the neighbor was intentionally using the space as an overflow parking spot, despite having plenty of room on his own property. He simply found it more convenient to park near the community mailbox, which happened to be directly in front of the homeowner's house. Word spread among nearby residents, many of whom admitted they had experienced similar issues with the same neighbor. He had a long history of claiming curb space, edging into yards, and parking so close to other cars that they could barely open their doors. People avoided confronting him because he was known to escalate even the smallest disputes. Instead, they learned to maneuver around his behavior. But now the conflict directly affected someone who wasn't willing to roll over quietly. The homeowner attempted to resolve the issue through all the polite channels first. They left friendly notes on the windshield, gently reminding the neighbor about private property. They mentioned the situation to the HOA, hoping for guidance, only to discover the neighbor had historically ignored several HOA warnings without consequence. Several board members sighed when his name was mentioned, explaining how difficult he was. The homeowner quickly realized they were dealing with someone who knew how to bend the rules until they snapped. The breaking point came one morning when the homeowner was running late. The SUV was once again parked right across the driveway, completely blocking any exit. It became clear that this wasn't just inconsideration, it was harassment. Every polite attempt at communication had been ignored, and the neighbor seemed to enjoy the disruption. The homeowner felt anger mixing with frustration, but underneath that, a resolve began to form. It was time for a more serious approach. After speaking with a friend who worked in security, the homeowner made a decision that would ultimately change the course of the situation. A pair of motion-activated cameras were installed discreetly around the driveway area, positioned specifically to monitor any parking violations and capture anything unusual happening near the property line. The cameras were small but powerful, capable of recording high-quality video even at night. The homeowner hoped that with undeniable video evidence, the HOA or local authorities might finally take action. For the next several days, the homeowner kept their routine normal. They didn't mention the cameras, didn't confront the neighbor again, and didn't make any noticeable changes that might alert him. Meanwhile, the cameras silently captured every movement in front of the house. At first, the footage showed exactly what the homeowner expected: the SUV pulling up late at night, the neighbor casually stepping out, sometimes glancing toward the house before walking away. It was frustrating, but not surprising. Then, one night, something unexpected appeared on the footage. Something the homeowner had never imagined the cameras would catch. A pattern began to emerge that hinted at a behavior far more concerning than just a parking issue. It was subtle at first, almost easy to overlook. But as the homeowner reviewed the footage again, the realization took shape. The neighbor wasn't just parking his vehicle somewhere convenient. He was hiding something. And what he was doing late at night, right in front of the homeowner's property, was about to expose a secret that would shock the entire neighborhood. The next morning began like any other, but the homeowner could not shake the strange feeling left from reviewing the footage the night before. The discovery had been subtle, a series of late-night visits by the neighbor to his own SUV, each time staying only a few minutes, always checking the surroundings in a way that felt far too cautious for someone simply retrieving forgotten items from their car. It wasn't the act itself that felt suspicious, but the repetitive nature and the secrecy surrounding it. As the homeowner continued reviewing the recordings in full, a clearer pattern started to emerge. The neighbor consistently appeared at oddly specific times, always between 1 o'clock and 3 a.m., always glancing around nervously, and always carrying something small and unidentifiable in his hands. He would open the back door of the vehicle, place the object inside, and then leave without hesitation. The camera caught him only in the dim glow of streetlights, but his tense posture was unmistakable. These weren't casual late-night check-ins. These were calculated, intentional visits. Curiosity grew into unease, and unease slowly morphed into suspicion. The homeowner replayed the video frame by frame, trying to understand what, exactly, was happening inside that SUV. The neighbor wasn't staying long enough to sort anything, clean the vehicle, or move things around. He was depositing things, not retrieving them. And each item appeared to be roughly the same size, small packages or containers that he carried with unusual care. The homeowner couldn't help but wonder if this activity had anything to do with the driveway blocking behavior. Why choose that spot, night after night? Why act with such secrecy? Why park so deliberately close to a property that was clearly not his? And, most importantly, what was inside those packages? Despite the rising questions, the homeowner remained cautious. It was dangerous to jump to conclusions, especially when the evidence, although suspicious, didn't yet explain the full situation. Still, something felt undeniably wrong. The SUV had become more than a parking nuisance. It was a focal point for activity that did not belong in a quiet residential neighborhood. The homeowner decided to take a more strategic approach rather than reacting impulsively. They documented each night's footage, saving clips with timestamps and notes about the neighbor's behavior. Organization became essential, especially if this situation escalated into something involving law enforcement or the HOA. With each passing day, the homeowner became more certain that this wasn't just a petty parking dispute. There was something larger unfolding. A week passed, and the behavior continued without any significant change. The neighbor visited the SUV at least 4 nights during that period, each time performing the same cautious ritual. The homeowner wondered how long this had been happening before the cameras were installed. Had the entire community been unaware of this behavior all along? Or had others noticed but chosen not to intervene, fearful of dealing with the neighbor's notorious defensiveness? Then came the night that truly pushed the situation into alarming territory. Around 2:15 a.m., the neighbor appeared once again, but this time he wasn't carrying a package. Instead, he pulled a large container from the backseat, one that looked heavy and awkward to lift. The way he handled it suggested that whatever was inside required careful movement. He checked the area more thoroughly than usual, scanning the street from one end to the other. His behavior was unusually tense, even for someone who had already exhibited suspicious actions. As he placed the container onto the curb, directly in front of the homeowner's house, he knelt down and fumbled with something attached to it. The camera caught only fragments of what he was doing, but it was enough to raise red flags. It didn't look like maintenance or repair. It didn't look like an innocent routine. It looked like preparation. Then, just as quickly as he had appeared, the neighbor cleaned up the area, returned the container to the back of the SUV, and walked away without looking back. The entire event lasted only a few minutes, but the implications were far-reaching. The homeowner felt a sense of dread that hadn't existed before, a deeper realization that the neighbor's actions could pose a real threat to the safety of the neighborhood. The following morning, as the homeowner observed the SUV parked once again across the driveway, they felt a shift inside themselves. The annoyance that had once driven them to install cameras had now turned into genuine concern. This wasn't just about inconvenience anymore. The neighbor was hiding something inside that vehicle, something he didn't want anyone to see. Still, the homeowner knew they had to proceed carefully. Acting without proper evidence could lead to backlash or even retaliation. And with a neighbor as difficult as this one, escalation could become dangerous. The homeowner needed more clarity, more proof. They needed to understand exactly what was happening before taking the next step. The cameras provided the beginning of the mystery, but now the homeowner needed answers that footage alone couldn't give. It was time to dig deeper, observe more closely, and uncover the truth behind those late-night visits. Because the secret inside that SUV was no longer just suspicious, it was unsettling. The days following the unsettling footage were tense. The homeowner watched every recording multiple times, analyzing the neighbor's movements and behavior in detail. Each night, the SUV's arrival, the careful unloading of small containers, and the seemingly secretive actions added layers to the mystery. It was no longer a petty parking dispute. It had escalated into something far more serious, something that could not be ignored. The homeowner began documenting everything methodically. Every clip, every timestamp, every minor detail was saved and labeled. They noted the times the neighbor arrived, how long he stayed, the type of container he carried, and even small details like the way he glanced around to check if anyone was watching. Every observation seemed to reveal new inconsistencies, new evidence of deliberate concealment. Patterns started to emerge. The neighbor's movements were not random. They followed a schedule, a plan. His behavior was calculated, methodical, and unnervingly precise. Meanwhile, the community began to notice subtle changes in the homeowner's routine. Neighbors would see the homeowner taking extra walks at night, sometimes with a flashlight, sometimes staring at the driveway, seemingly focused on nothing in particular. The homeowner maintained a calm demeanor in public, but inside, anticipation and anxiety were mounting. Something was about to be revealed, and the homeowner knew it. One evening, around dusk, the neighbor pulled up in the usual spot. This time, however, he acted differently. Instead of a brief visit, he stayed by the SUV longer, fumbling with the rear door, occasionally peering up and down the street. The homeowner watched through the camera feed, noticing something new, a glimmer of metallic reflection from one of the containers. The brief shine suggested it was not ordinary household items being moved but possibly something more illicit, something dangerous. Deciding that more evidence was necessary, the homeowner installed an additional camera with a closer angle, positioned to capture not just the neighbor's actions but also the contents of the SUV when possible. This new camera was discreetly hidden to avoid detection, ensuring that every movement could be observed without alerting the neighbor. The homeowner also installed a second, motion-activated camera on the side of the house to capture approaching pedestrians, providing a wider perspective of the area. Over the next several nights, the neighbor's activity became increasingly revealing. The SUV was parked exactly in the same location, blocking the driveway with purpose. The neighbor repeatedly unloaded containers and returned them inside the vehicle. But now, with the new angles, it became apparent that the containers weren't random, they were consistently marked with labels and tags. The homeowner's attention to detail allowed them to decipher small bits of information, symbols, stickers, and even handwritten notes that suggested the items were connected to some clandestine operation. Then, one night, the breakthrough came. The neighbor was seen carrying a large container toward the house, but instead of leaving it in the driveway, he attempted to hide it behind a row of shrubs at the front edge of the property. The homeowner's side camera caught him in full view. He crouched, covered the container with a tarp, and returned to the SUV without noticing the surveillance. This was the moment that changed everything. The homeowner had proof that the neighbor was hiding something illegally on the property, something that went far beyond simple parking issues or minor HOA violations. With this new evidence in hand, the homeowner began to piece together the neighbor's hidden agenda. It was clear that the SUV and the driveway blocking were not random acts of laziness or arrogance, they were strategic. By controlling the space in front of the house, the neighbor could conveniently load and unload these containers without being observed by anyone passing on the street. The driveway was more than just a spot, it was a perfect cover for activity that needed to stay secret. The realization brought a mix of fear and determination. The homeowner knew that exposing this behavior could have major consequences, not only for the neighbor but for the entire neighborhood. The neighbor's secret was dangerous enough that letting it continue unchecked could put multiple people at risk. The homeowner needed to act, but carefully. Any mistake could alert the neighbor, potentially destroying the evidence and escalating the situation into something even more hazardous. As the chapter closed, the homeowner's resolve strengthened. The cameras had revealed the truth that no one else in the community had seen. The neighbor's arrogance and greed, once irritating, now seemed dangerous. What had started as a simple blocked driveway had evolved into a full-blown investigation, a story that could shake the entire neighborhood to its core. The next step would be crucial. The homeowner had to uncover the full nature of what the neighbor was hiding and prepare for the moment when the truth would finally be revealed to everyone. The tension in the neighborhood had reached an unspoken boiling point, though most residents were still unaware of the storm brewing behind the walls of the seemingly quiet street. The homeowner had been meticulously reviewing every piece of footage, and the discovery of the container hidden behind the shrubs had pushed them into a new level of vigilance. They knew the next nights could bring a critical revelation, and preparation was key. For several nights, the homeowner observed patterns that left no room for doubt. The neighbor's SUV arrived at the same times, with the same rhythm, and the same ritualistic unloading of containers. But something had changed. The neighbor now seemed increasingly careful, more paranoid. He peered repeatedly down the street, scanned his surroundings obsessively, and even adjusted the tarp covering the hidden container multiple times. The homeowner realized that the neighbor had likely sensed a threat, though he had no idea what it was. One evening, as darkness fell, the neighbor arrived later than usual. The SUV's headlights cut through the dim street lights, illuminating the driveway in a way that made every shadow and movement visible on the camera feed. The homeowner's heart raced. They had set up a full night of observation, ensuring that nothing could be missed. The neighbor exited the vehicle, carrying not one but two containers, larger than those previously moved. With deliberate care, he placed them behind the shrubs, then crouched to secure the tarp. Every motion was captured in clear view of the hidden camera. The homeowner zoomed in on the footage, trying to see what was inside. The containers, however, were opaque, and the contents remained hidden. But a critical clue appeared. A faint logo on the side of one container, partially visible under the tarp. It was a logo associated with industrial chemicals, something completely out of place in a residential neighborhood. The homeowner's pulse quickened as they realized the danger. The neighbor wasn't simply hiding packages or belongings. He was storing something hazardous, illegal, and potentially explosive. With this revelation, the homeowner knew that merely confronting the neighbor or notifying the HOA would not be sufficient. The situation required undeniable evidence and careful planning. They continued observing, documenting every movement, every detail, every deviation from the usual pattern. Each night brought more clues, revealing how methodical and organized the neighbor had become. The timing of the vehicle arrivals, the way containers were arranged, even the camouflage of the tarp, all spoke to someone who had been planning this operation for a long time. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. One night, as the neighbor returned from a late trip to the SUV, he fumbled with one of the containers. A corner of the tarp lifted, and the homeowner finally caught a glimpse of the contents. Rows of small vials and bottles, tightly packed and clearly marked. The labels included warnings about chemical hazards and flammable materials. The homeowner's stomach sank. This was no longer about parking or minor property disputes. The neighbor was storing dangerous chemicals in a residential area, putting every household on the street at risk. Armed with this evidence, the homeowner took a cautious approach. They began compiling a detailed report with time-stamped video clips, photographs of the containers, and notes on the neighbor's repeated late-night behavior. Every action was recorded with precision, ensuring that the proof was indisputable. The goal was not revenge but protection of themselves, their family, and the community. The following day, subtle changes began to ripple through the neighborhood. Some residents had noticed the blocked driveway for months. Others had seen the neighbor's SUV frequently, but no one had suspected the true danger. The homeowner decided that it was time to carefully expose the situation. They shared some of the footage anonymously with a local community safety officer and a trusted member of the HOA, framing the concern around public safety and potential violations of hazardous material laws. The reactions were immediate. Once the evidence was reviewed, the authorities quickly realized the gravity of the situation. The neighbor's behavior, previously dismissed as mere rudeness or territoriality, was now being treated as a public safety hazard. Emergency services, law enforcement, and the HOA coordinated to ensure that the materials could be safely removed and that the neighborhood would be secure. The homeowner's patience and meticulous observation had turned what began as a minor inconvenience into a preventive measure that safeguarded everyone on the street. The story of the neighbor's secret spread quickly through the community. People who had once tolerated his behavior now viewed him with shock and suspicion. The same neighbor who had thought he could act with impunity had underestimated the vigilance and persistence of a homeowner who refused to be intimidated. And just like that, the once feared SUV parked across the driveway had become the key to exposing the truth, ensuring that justice and safety finally prevailed. The aftermath of the exposure brought a wave of relief across the neighborhood, but the story was far from over. The homeowner, though satisfied that the immediate danger had been mitigated, realized that the neighbor's audacity and recklessness could not go unchecked. What began as blocked driveway frustration had escalated into a story of deceit, greed, and potential danger. Now, it was time to turn the tables and ensure that the neighbor faced accountability beyond the removal of the hazardous materials. The HOA and law enforcement were swift in their response. Officials inspected the SUV, the hidden containers, and the surrounding property. It was confirmed that the neighbor had been storing highly flammable and potentially toxic chemicals without a permit. The situation could have caused fires, explosions, or serious health risks for the residents. The homeowner's evidence, the carefully recorded footage, proved invaluable. Without it, authorities might have lacked sufficient proof to take decisive action, and the neighbor could have continued hiding his dangerous secret. The homeowner, however, realized that simply relying on authorities might not fully prevent future incidents. The neighbor was known for manipulation, excuses, and playing the victim. To protect themselves and the rest of the community, the homeowner decided to escalate the exposure strategically. They created a clear, chronological compilation of the footage, photographs, and notes detailing each suspicious activity. Every late-night visit, every container movement, every moment the neighbor tried to hide evidence was included. The result was undeniable proof, irrefutable and meticulously documented. The homeowner then shared this compilation with the neighborhood HOA board in a controlled meeting. The board members were visibly shocked. Many admitted that they had long suspected this neighbor of manipulative behavior but had no hard evidence. Now, confronted with the homeowner's detailed documentation, they could no longer ignore the severity of his actions. The HOA quickly issued a formal notice of violation, and combined with law enforcement involvement, the neighbor faced potential fines, eviction threats, and legal consequences for unsafe storage of hazardous materials. What made the situation even more satisfying for the homeowner was witnessing the shift in the neighbor's own confidence. The once smug man, who had proudly parked his SUV in front of the driveway with impunity, now found himself scrutinized, monitored, and publicly accountable. His attempts to intimidate others were met with watchful eyes, and the power he thought he had over the neighborhood began to evaporate. The tables had turned, and the homeowner's patience, caution, and meticulous documentation had made it possible. The story quickly became a topic of conversation among residents. Families who had previously endured minor inconveniences or small quarrels with the neighbor were now in awe of the homeowner's diligence. People began to realize the value of vigilance, evidence, and strategic action. The narrative shifted from frustration over blocked driveways to admiration for the homeowner's courage in uncovering a dangerous secret. The neighbor's reputation, once built on fear and manipulation, was now irreparably damaged. Even in the days following the formal intervention, the homeowner remained vigilant. Though authorities had removed the chemicals and the HOA had issued formal notices, the homeowner understood that accountability was ongoing. Surveillance continued, not out of obsession, but out of caution. The neighbor was unpredictable, and the homeowner wanted to ensure that neither their property nor the neighborhood would be at risk again. Every time the SUV appeared, there was now a sense of controlled scrutiny, a reminder that every action could be observed, documented, and exposed if necessary. The homeowner also took steps to educate the neighborhood. Anonymous alerts about hazardous materials, tips for documenting suspicious activity, and information about HOA regulations were circulated. People began paying closer attention to what happened on their own streets, more aware of how small disturbances could hide dangerous behaviors. The story of the blocked driveway had transformed into a powerful lesson on vigilance, persistence, and the importance of evidence in holding individuals accountable. By the end of this chapter, it was clear that the homeowner had not only protected themselves but had fundamentally altered the dynamics of the neighborhood. The once feared neighbor had been stripped of his advantage, and the community was now safer and more aware. The frustration of a blocked driveway had sparked a chain of events that exposed danger, enforced accountability, and reminded everyone that sometimes, the smallest inconveniences can lead to the most significant victories. With the neighbor's hazardous materials removed and legal actions underway, a sense of calm slowly returned to the street. The once dreaded SUV no longer blocked the driveway, and the neighbor, now fully aware that his actions were being monitored and documented, became noticeably more cautious. The homeowner had achieved what they set out to do: protecting their property, exposing dangerous behavior, and holding the neighbor accountable. But the resolution extended far beyond the physical space of the driveway. It reached into the fabric of the entire neighborhood. The HOA formally reprimanded the neighbor. Combined with law enforcement's involvement, he faced fines and strict conditions for compliance, ensuring that storing dangerous chemicals or conducting secretive activities in a residential area would no longer be tolerated. Other residents, who had quietly endured minor disputes with the neighbor over years, now felt a profound sense of vindication. The homeowner's careful documentation and unwavering persistence had not only safeguarded themselves but had also shielded every family on the street from potential disaster. The impact on the community was immediate. Neighbors who had previously avoided confrontation began speaking up about other small issues, empowered by the example of the homeowner's vigilance. The story of the blocked driveway that led to the discovery of dangerous materials spread quickly throughout the neighborhood, and it became a cautionary tale about the importance of paying attention to seemingly minor conflicts. The homeowner's strategy, patient observation, careful evidence collection, and a calculated approach to confrontation served as a blueprint for others who might face similar issues in the future. For the homeowner, the journey had been exhausting, nerve-wracking, and emotionally intense. Nights spent reviewing footage, planning strategies, and documenting every movement of the neighbor had tested patience and resilience. Yet, the payoff was undeniable. The victory was not just personal, it was communal. They had transformed a simple nuisance, a blocked driveway, into an opportunity to uncover dangerous activity, educate the neighborhood, and enforce justice. The neighbor, stripped of his previous sense of entitlement, was now a cautionary example. The arrogance and boldness that once defined him had been replaced with a cautious, defensive posture. He no longer dared to park in front of other people's homes without hesitation. The surveillance cameras, once tools of protection, now symbolized accountability. Everyone on the street understood that actions, however minor or secretive, could be observed, documented, and exposed. The homeowner also took the time to strengthen ties within the community. They shared tips for monitoring suspicious activity, encouraged open communication about safety concerns, and emphasized the importance of vigilance. Slowly, the street that had been marked by tension and frustration became a more connected, aware, and proactive community. Families felt safer knowing that dangerous behaviors could not hide behind silence or fear. Reflecting on the experience, the homeowner recognized the broader lesson: small conflicts can reveal larger truths. What began as a simple frustration over a blocked driveway unveiled a hidden, hazardous operation and a neighbor's dangerous disregard for safety. The homeowner's careful observation and persistence had prevented potential disaster, held the neighbor accountable, and reinforced the importance of evidence and strategic action in addressing problems. Finally, life returned to a semblance of normalcy. The driveway was unobstructed, the neighborhood felt safer, and the homeowner could enjoy their property without fear or frustration. Yet the experience left a lasting mark. It reminded the homeowner, and eventually the entire community, that vigilance, courage, and careful planning could transform even the smallest annoyance into an opportunity to ensure justice, safety, and accountability. In the end, the neighbor who once blocked the driveway to assert control and create inconvenience had been exposed and held responsible. The street regained peace, but more importantly, the neighborhood had been united by the homeowner's determination and strategic foresight. The story that started with a blocked parking spot ended with a triumph of persistence, observation, and justice. The cameras remained in place, a subtle but constant reminder that actions, no matter how secretive, have consequences, and that sometimes, even the smallest conflicts can reveal the biggest secrets.